Hello, everyone. My name is Zuma Qureshi, Bhangra Podcast, Podboy. This is another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. Today, I have the judges from Buckeye Mela 2024. And also, disclosure, I competed at Buckeye Mela. I hate all of them because they didn't place me. And yeah, we're just getting that out of the way. I'm sorry if anybody is actually upset that I am doing this. I don't really care. All right. Anyways, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
I'll go first. So I'm Robbie, one of the judges at Buckeye, one of the founders of SDK, Sherannikong, acting as coach.
Karan, one of the judges as well from Buckeye, dancer and senior dancer from Surma.
Fantastic. Oh,
hello. My name's Anil. One of the other judges for Buckeye 2024. Dancer. College Bhangra. Yeah, about it.
All right. Give me one moment while I figure out if this thing is working. Yeah, give me 1 sec. Because nobody else is replying, and it's making me nervous. Fantastic. Alrighty. So, for everybody who's listening, the way this is going to work is we're going to more or less follow the similar format. So, we're going to more or less follow the same format that every other judges panel starts. We're going to go through the rubric. We're going to talk about deliberations. We're going to talk about all the other tamasha that happened that is relevant to the placings conversation. After which, what I'll have y'all do is type in the chat. I'm going to see if this live call-in thing works, and we're going to have y'all call in, ask your questions, and if there's anything else you all want to ask the judges. Cool, great, awesome. So first things first, let's go. Okay. First things first. Elephant in the room. What happened with Alamo? Because based off what you guys said, have told me, and I've heard, in order to understand placings, you fundamentally have to understand what happened with Alamo. So whoever wants to go for it, just help everyone understand.
Yeah, I can just give like a high level overview.
Sure.
Morning-ish of the competition, I think all of us got on a call. We got on a call from the directors wanted to get on a call with all of us, and they explained that there was a team. They didn't name the team. They kept all that out of it. It was just totally giving, like, and thereas on top of already giving them a hard time prior to this, they told us there was a situation that happened at Tech. They explained things like team showed up late to Tech, or team was being very disrespectful to not just the individuals on the committee from the competition, but to the staffing of the actual venue. And I think when I heard that part, knowing that this was like they got kicked out of the venue last year, that's when I was like, oh, like that's a big deal, because the staff members aren't part of the competition and they can make or break where Buckeye Mela happens next year. The director told us went into more detail, told us that there was a bit of profanity used. I'm just going to keep it at that.
I mean, bro, just like
language.
yeah, okay, all right, cool.
Got to do it like my soap notes, okay? So that's it. And basically they asked if this would be along the lines of a disqualification for unsportsmanlike conduct. And if you look at the rubric, which I believe you have posted there, at the bottom, there's a listing of disqualifications, and unsportsmanlike conduct is one of those. They asked us what we thought. We all gave our 2 cents on this, back and forth here and there. But at the end of the day, we told them, this is what we think. However, it's up to you as the board to decide what to do. We started off at disqualification. I think the board decided that was a bit too harsh. They wanted the team to dance. We said, all right, the max point deduction is 10. We'll just give the team minus 10 automatically and then just deduct it after the whole competition occurred. Just make sure that they know this is going on. That was then, I think one of the judges mentioned that 10 might be too harsh.
Sorry, who said that? One of the judges, or
yeah, one of the judges.
Okay.
So we decided, like we said, we didn't really decide. We basically said it would be interesting if you gave it like a warning system, like here's -5. We were told that the team had an extra tech time, so we specifically told the board to tell them this before their tech, to say, hey, you're going to get -5. Do this tech time. If you are going to cause any more problems, we will upgrade it to a total of -10. The board was like, okay, that seems like a fair thing. We will go talk to them. And then that was the end of the call. We were all in agreement that like that seemed fair. And then we all decided to, like, that was early in the morning, so we all went to brunch. And then we came back and we realized we hadn't heard back from anybody for like a couple of hours about what the final decision was or what they were going to do. But I think like by the time we got to the venue, we were told that they were only going to remove 3 points from that team post competition.
Sorry, say it again.
That by the time we got to the venue, like we were getting ready and prepping, whatever, that's when we were finally told that they will be removing 3 points from said team after the competition. Or after
can you help me understand how it went from DQ to 10 to like, did they tell you how exactly they arrived at the decision to just take off 3?
For the 3 points, I believe we were told that they brought up 5 points to the team, and the team said we're not going to dance at that point. I think it got negotiated at 3 points between the team and the board. Once again, like, if this is only from our perspective of this.
Exactly.
We're hearing through the grapevine. And so we were like, that seems a little too easy, light.
Yeah. Okay.
And we told the competition, go tell them that it's 5. And they said, we already told them, so we can't make the change anymore. And that's where like that conversation ended for that time being.
Gotcha. Okay. Does anybody else want to add anything or related to before the actual competition began? What? Cool. If not, then let's go into Rubric conversation. So Mela is a well-known competition, and more or less it's a pretty, I don't want to say exactly 50-50, but like pretty close. So tell me, I guess first and foremost, were there any major changes in terms of wording or point allocation to the rubric in comparison to last year when you guys were given this rubric?
There was.
I think one of the things that we changed was like cohesion. I think it was like 15 points at first, and we changed it to 10.
And then there was a 5-point section somewhere in set design that we embedded somewhere else and added points there. Do we have the old rubric? I don't know. Let's see. 10, 15, 15, 10. Or is that the cohesion thing?
Well, anyways, okay. So a few points taken off cohesion. Anything else?
So after the thing that happened at Berg, so Rungla, the bug came off, hit the floor and all that.
Right.
So we kind of wanted to address that, make sure teams that were actually tying bug properly and paying close attention to it. So we decided to add that bug/Chunni if it falls off, or if it falls off and hits the floor, it's automatic DQ. If your head is not covered, it could be a Chunni or bug. It was -5, so that's something we added.
Okay.
And I believe the dancing was like 8 minutes minimum before. Yeah, we changed it to 7.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Oh my lord, 8 minutes minimum dancing. That's kind of long.
The dancing was 6 minimum, and we upped it to 7.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Nabil's in. Okay, thank you. All right. Give me 1 second while I fucking change this. Nabil, hey, how are you? How's life? Yeah. Okay, let me fix all the screens and such in the meantime. But recording on a new track. That's great. Okay, cool.
Nabil, you want to talk about how you were a big advocate for the 7-minute minimum dancing time?
Yeah. No, I just felt like, I felt like we should have a minimum because it's kind of hard to standardize or I guess compare teams when they're dancing at very different set lengths, comparing like a 6-minute set to an 8-minute set when you are dancing for like 75% of the time. It can really skew like how much, how you view the execution, energy, a lot of aspects of the performance. So that's why I felt like we should set like a minimum around 7 minutes. I felt like it was pretty good. It's like an average performance length. And so that's kind of why I felt that way. I felt like everyone else kind of agreed. So that's why we went with that.
I think that should be the standard nowadays moving forward.
Yeah.
I think 7 minutes should be a standard dancing time. Just because nowadays, I'm sure, your gigs that you guys do, it's like 6 minutes at least. Right, because
you have some aggressive ass gigs. I have never danced a 6-minute gig set. What are you talking about?
Think about it. If you put like a 30-second, 40-second skit in there, or something, it ends up being 6 minutes. About 6 minutes of technically that's how long the mix is. But I think 7 minutes is a pretty good standard. That I think.
I think so.
I feel like most gigs are like 5-6 minutes at least. I mean, not at least, at like around that length, 5-6 minutes. So I do agree. I mean, I feel like gigs are more chill, obviously. Kind of just, it's a little bit more expression and having fun, but it's not as hard hitting as like a comp, like how you would dance at a comp. But I do agree. I think that I think all comps, like Garan said, you should just have that basic minimum, so that way we can kind of standardize teams and compare them across the board.
I think
that's fair, especially when like sets are like. I'll be honest, I think like sets are getting shorter and shorter and shorter all the time. Used to be now.
Like 7.5 minutes average. I don't know what happened. Yeah, in the past couple years.
Like
even before COVID, it got shorter.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I definitely have been like, yo, if you just cut, like, if you don't like an idea or like whatever, just cut it short. Nobody really notices. Nobody really cares. But like, this is the first time somebody's bringing it up. That being said, I agree. So we had some questions from the chat while we're discussing this, and I was addressing all these things. Hold on, cut. Cool. All right, everybody can be seen now. So somebody was asking, so to clarify, Pagh off and hits the floor, that's a DQ. And I guess my question is, so I know you guys mentioned the fact that it was because of what happened at Berg, but DQ seems a little harsh to me, to be frankly honest.
Yeah, was it DQ? I feel like it was, what was it? Disrespectful bug recovery.
I mean, you just said DQ, so that's why I'm saying DQ.
Yeah.
If there was if it wasn't dealt with properly, like respectfully or anything, like DQ.
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, they're not doing the VTech punt off the stage. Yeah, that's a DQ.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
TBT to when that happened. What year was that? Like 2013, 2014? I don't know.
Was that VTech?
Or sorry, not VTech. I'm sorry. The really good Virginia team. Collegiate team. VCU. That's it.
VCU. Yeah.
VCU. Sorry. I didn't mean any kind of slander. VTech. My bad. But let's go over the conversation about placings and such. So third place, where was everybody at? How was everybody feeling before, while you're getting into the placing discussions? Oh, and also just for everybody who's gonna just be listening to audio. So I'm going to read out the placings that ultimately happened. So we have Fortile at 103.3, MSU at 103.5. At second, Alamo at 101.3 at third, FCB at 101.3 at fourth, Azaad at 89.5, MMD at 80, CMU at 81.1, and VDS at 76.6. So those are the scores. And you can, if you're watching on the live stream, you can see it right there. And I guess when we're talking about the third place conversation, would y'all, if you take a second and just kind of like tell, like actually just tell me the conversation. How did that go? How did that happen?
So I remember we all like kind of got in the room, and I think we were all initially like kind of just like talking aloud for like a minute or two, and then we decided to just go around the room and say our top 4 out loud. And then we kind of just, I remember we kind of took averages. Like we had a lot, basically all of us had Furtile at like 1 and 2 and 3, and then everyone else had like MSU at 1, 2. So we were like, okay, those 2 teams based off averages are going to be our top 2, and no one really had any disagreements there. And then we went to the next 2. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, but that's what I remember happening. And then we saw that the next 2 on average were First Class and Alamo, so we ended up discussing there.
Okay. So looking at the score sheet, literally tied. So again, I danced in FCB, blah blah blah. But tell me, what ultimately was this decision between Alamo and FCB? So, because I mean, they're literally tied.
I think the biggest factor here, and Robbie said it best in the room at that point, was it came down to it came down to Mela factor, right? And what that was asking for, and did the performance kind of like paint what the comp was envisioning, right? And Robbie said it best. They blew that section out of the, like they won it. They won it fair and square. They had one of the highest scores in it, and per rubric they also had a better execution score, I believe. I could be wrong. If you want to pull, I can't see the scores.
Let me pull it up. There you go.
I think they were like probably one of the higher ones of the night too. And so at that end of the day, like on my end, I know I could say that like, even though I could paint reasons for why Alamo shouldn't be third, I couldn't paint reasons for why third. I couldn't paint reasons for why FCB should have been third, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
that was on my end.
Yeah. And you were mentioning like Mela factor and how they blew it out of the water. Can you help me and everybody else like understand what exactly did they do? Was it execution? Was it their ideas? What is the concept? Was it like paint a picture?
So
I can, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go. Yeah, somebody else can go.
So if you look at it, if you look at that category itself on the rubric, right? It says word for word, what was your overall impression of the performance? Did they bring excitement? How impactful were the intro and ending? Did the set maintain a tone that represents their identity? Did the ideas add value? I think when Alamo came out, right, even in just their intro, they did it was like a freeze, made like that type of thing. That in itself set the tone for what the performance could be. And they continue to hit that category throughout the performance. I won't go into detail on it a lot because I know they're going to compete again.
Yeah.
But they definitely held down that category more than the other teams did that night. So just because of that, it set them apart. But again, I will say the margins for the placings were very, very tight. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as soon as I present.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to comment on Alamo CB?
For me as well, it kind of hit the same way. If you go into cohesion, for me, actually, it was the other way around. I actually had FCB and Alamo tied in cohesion. I felt like there was a lack of, I guess you could say, I'm just pulling up the rubric here. Execution, I had FCB slightly lower than Alamo. I felt like the quality of dancing and the energy aspect felt slightly lower than Alamo. I felt like Alamo dancers just had I don't know. They were slightly better in that specific category for me.
Sure.
But other than that, I felt like cohesion and set design. I had Alamo and FCB tied. In my scores, you see Alamo only had 1 point higher overall than FCB. So that's what it came down to at the end for me.
Okay.
And then, of course, when we discussed it, then, we had Alamo third.
If not, this
No,
cool too.
I think they kind of all hit the points that stuck out to me as well. I agree, the Mela factor. I think their performance, it was just a little unique compared to the other performances of the night. The way they started off was really nice. I felt like the one thing that kind of brought, well, I don't want to comment on this too much because they're competing again. So, but I felt like they had a very unique performance for me throughout the night compared to other teams. Their set style, the way they choreoed it, the way the flow was just different. And I think the execution factor for me is where they won it over FCB. Even though both teams executed pretty well, they both have obviously really great dancers. Just that night, that performance, the way their mix was hitting, the way that they executed the set cohesively, I felt like they edged them out based off the execution and the Mela factor. I think by points, I had them beating FCB by a little bit of a margin, actually. So I think that those are the reasons for me.
Okay, cool. The other thing, so one of the listeners are bringing up. So didn't watch Alamo and they only watched Fertile and MSU. I'm assuming these scores are -3. If the -3 wasn't in place, would Alamo play first, or was MSU or Fertile or MSU that much better?
I think this was a question we probably all got asked separately, or even at the competition itself. And honestly, on my end, like, both Fertile and MSU had it be like before the deductions were in place. That went for, I think, for a couple of us too, or having Alamo, I think max 2, if anything. Anybody else want to jump in and speak on their scores?
Yeah, like for me, if we don't count deductions, I had both for
And so I know okay, again, just for anybody who's just tuning in right now, so ultimately committee decided to just do -3 for Alamo based off of reasons. I'm actually going to have the Mela directors on sometime later this week, and they just so that they can say their piece and put to rest whatever they want to put to rest. But I know that there was also some adjustments when it came to deductions generally because of bug malfunctions and Chunni malfunctions, et cetera, et cetera. And I did want to also give y'all some space to address that. I know, Robbie, you said you had some.
Yeah, so I think we kind of started off the conversation with how did the point deductions, how did they come up with that? And the last conversation that we had was, okay, let's do ultimately like a -5, and if there's another incident, then do -10. At that point, that was the last conversation we had. We didn't know until of the -3 until later. Had we known, we probably would have pushed back, and I'll talk about why I felt strongly about the -3. It's because so we're giving 5 points off for a Chunni that fell off. Just came off the head by accident. But if it comes to the point where a director has to call the judges in the morning saying, hey, we're having these issues, well, technically, the rubric says that team gets disqualified. But if you're going to settle for point deductions, you have to make it make sense. You can't take 5 points off for a Chunni, but then a team that could have been disqualified, you only give them -3. Had Alamo gotten the -5, they probably would have dropped to 4th for me, I think. Yeah, they would have dropped to 4th.
Yeah, same on my end as well. FCB would have been 3rd, and Alamo would have been 4th. And that's how I kept my deduction as well. So Chunni deduction, I actually went it could go up to 5, but I went 3 points. So I kept it. If it's Pagh, a floppy torla coming off or whatever it is, I will deduct 3. And I did the same thing for Chunni. But I don't think I did anything for Paghs, but I definitely did it for Chunni's.
Yeah, and I think what was it when we saw? I know on my end when I saw the moment I saw like Fertiles, the Blue Girls Chunni come off, I was like, this is going to be like an issue, because like I think Robbie put it beautifully in the fact that whatever the team did in the morning required them to call us and like discuss and get our opinion on what to do. Like it must have been very bad. And it must have been like very disrespectful. Like it wasn't, I could not equate like a Chunni coming off ahead because of a bobby pin or something to like costing a competition their venue. Right. So that's why we met with the directors. We asked them, I said this straight up to them. I was like, if I'm going to go -5 for that Chunni, I'm not like whatever team that like is the deductions of like, or that where we were considering disqualified, like take my scores down for them. Like I cannot do that based off of the rubric. And they're like, then just equal it out to like what we're giving that team. So I brought mine down to -3 per Chunni. I had to do that for Tile and did it for MMD as well.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was saying I agree. I think we all I think when it came down to, because we all had, I think, adjusted. I remember I adjusted my like deductions for Chunni's and Chadar malfunctions, and I mean I think the Chadar ones weren't as strictly listed, but the Chunni malfunctions I adjusted my scores as well. And then when we got back to final deliberations, we had this discussion as well. We all like talked about it and were, I think, all pretty much in agreement that based off what happened in the morning, there's no way we could penalize a team that much for a Chunni when more serious things were happening. So I think it was like across the board. So that ended up kind of being a way we kind of even the playing field a little bit more.
Yeah, because I mean, I think if anybody's watched, okay, so one thing I want to clear up, Vaughn, and I'll address your thing in a second. One thing I want to clear up. So directors told me that I know that it says right here, Alamo is -1. They actually did -3 hard coded into the judges' sheets. So even though it says -1 here, it was, I guess, total -4. And so it shows up in these. And so if anybody's, I want to further reiterate. So even though it says -5 here, y'all seem to have agreed that -3 seems to be the move. Okay. And so then Varan was asking, so did everyone do -3 for Chunni deductions on Fortile? Also, did every judge take into consideration that should probably hurt the team in most execution categories? So like the Chunni, I believe, came off early, and so how did that impact the rest of the set? Would it have been different if the Chunni fell off earlier versus later? And wanted to confirm, not trying to drill, just wondering.
I think when it comes to like execution in that Chunni coming off, same thing with like a bug coming off, or same thing with like if you were to hyperextend a sup or a kunna, right? It's about how that individual proceeded to go about the rest of the performance. Did they let it hinder them? Did they show it on their face? Did it get in the way of like certain formational aspects or like execution of choreography and certain things? So like it's all about the recovery at the time, like at that moment for the rest of the set. Did the Chunni come off at the very beginning? Unfortunately for that girl, it did, but she ended up carrying her own weight. I think somebody maybe mentioned her as like potentially up there for like best female of the night too, right? Like she did not let that Chunni off her head like disrupt her dancing at all. I don't think it affected a lot of sync, in my opinion. She recovered fairly well. She like acted as if that wasn't the case. If anybody wants to jump in on that.
I agree. I think it was Pink, MMD, one of the girls, the Chunni came off as well. I actually had her listed as one of the best female dancers as well, potentially. And she held herself well. I know it was a distraction within the team, but at the end of the day, how it was recovered, I felt like it was recovered pretty beautifully, and I think I docked, of course, 3 points for the Chunni, but that individual kept their weight throughout the performance.
One thing I also did want to ask, based just because I know we're spending so much time on this Pagh and Chunni conversation, but I think it is important because ultimately this is something relatively unique. I don't really see many judging panels agreeing to take off equivalent amounts of such a large deduction for Chunnis and Paghs, and clearly that had a very big role in how the placings ultimately played out. So one, I guess, question I do have is, having had this experience of judging and taking out this much for Chunni's malfunctions, do you think that this is something that the rest of the circuit should adopt, or what? Because I know there's a whole conversation when it comes to, generally bugs are more or less, I hate saying it the way I am, but I'm just going to say it for the lack of a better word. Just the bugs are valued more. They're always just generally seen in the circuit as a more valuable thing to fall off, and then blah, 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 gender norms, gender dynamics, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to dive into that. But that being said, generally past circuit
yeah.
Precedence is -5 for bugs, maybe -1 for -2 for Chunni. But you guys decided to more or less make it equivalent. So yeah, go. No, please shoot.
Yeah.
So the whole bug thing, I think ultimately it worked out. I can't remember if any bug got like that.
One that almost that seemed like it was falling off.
It looked like it was going to fall off the whole performance. Yeah.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about, but it didn't, right?
Yeah, it did.
Didn't. Yeah, it started off, and I thought it was kind of fall.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of impressive. I thought people were paying closer attention to it and how you tie the Pagh. So I think it kind of works out, and maybe it's to better the circuit. Who knows? I think personally, for me, the Chunni thing, I think I might have brought it up. I think I just tagged it along because we're okay, it's kind of the same concept. In hindsight, I didn't think Chunni would be a problem. But this competition, for some reason, that was the wildest thing to see. Just pin them up right. Like Anil said, that when I think it was a blue girl on Fertila, her Chunni came off, I was in shock. I thought it was going to hinder a lot of placings, but I mean, I think it worked out. That's.
I think was it overall whatever you said, Umar, is very valid, and there are many opinions to that. So we're not going to open up Pandora's box there. But I think we'll go a different route and say you look at your Vardi as a whole, as a uniform, right? And that is what you're performing in. Make sure that everything about it, from top to bottom, is done properly. You tie the chadar proper. You don't have the legs showing out, right? If you have that border at the bottom of your chadar, make sure that's aligned. If you hit a jugni or jal, right? That's how you know that is tied relatively decently. But like I said, top to bottom, that means if the top is a Chunni or a bug, make sure that whatever part of the uniform you're talking about, it's crisp, it's done right. You're performing, you're presenting yourself right to whoever's watching that live stream or whoever's in the audience. So make sure you look good. Isn't there that saying that's dress the way you want to present yourself or something? I don't know.
Dress the way you want to impress.
That one, something like that.
Fahad was just calling you out on your legs, showing the entire Berg set from Anil. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Fahad, tell your whole team that too.
Good thing there was no deductions for that. No, the only thing I'll add on is just I know the bug obviously has cultural, religious significance, so obviously it's treated as very important and shouldn't be disrespected. But I guess as we bring the Bhangra circuit over to Western countries and are trying to make it an equal playing field for men and women both, I think it's fair to kind of to put importance on the Chunni, because if you're gonna judge a female dancer at the same level as you're gonna judge a male dancer, or a all female team versus an all male team, if you had 12 male dancers all wearing bugs and 12 females all wearing Chunni, technically, if you only cared about the bug, there would be no way for a female team to get disqualified. So you have to kind of have to equal the playing field if you're going to judge teams on a similar playing field. So I think that's initially why we decided to go the Chunni and Pagh route points wise. And I do think it worked out, and it's kind of sad that it ended up docking people, some teams points, but I think it was I don't think it's an unfair thing, and I feel like it should be upheld in the future. That's just my opinion. I know people disagree a little bit, but I think it's, especially if we're going to try to keep the playing field even.
The more you talk, the more I kind of like vibe with it. And I think I will say, to just before we move on to the rest of the conversation, I really do think that Vardy malfunctions and not tying things right, not having things ready, etc. It tends to be. I feel like it's always a reflection of how prepared the team was going into this competition. Like, I know at Champs we made the set the week before. It's just like kind of how it unfortunately happened, and like our pugs were floppy, and we were all like chickens with our heads cut off the entire like month before. And in previous competitions when we've had bug issues or Vardy issues, it was always because the rest of the performance in terms of preparation, everything was not tightly knit. I can't say that's everybody's experience, but I can say that's my personal experience. And so I think there is definitely something to say when, if you have a Vardy malfunction, something else probably went wrong when it came to set preparation and how you guys got ready in preparation of it. But I don't want to harp on this too much because we spent like 30 minutes on like a Chunni. So let's move on to the second and first place conversations. So first place we had Fortile Hire at 103.3 and MSU at 103.5. So tell me about that conversation, because based off points, MSU should have won. So tell me how that conversation go.
We had a conversation. We had a conversation about which judge didn't do the -3 for the Chunni. That was me. So I stuck to the rubric, and had I maybe done -3, it could have pushed them over, and that was part of our.
I think also 3 people. Sorry, was it 2 and 2 had Fortile at first, and 2 had MSU at first?
Is that what it was? 3 and 2. It was 3 and 2, but one. I think Robbie had the tie.
Yeah, I had the tie.
Robbie had the tie.
I have to actually look at the scores right now. So I had MSU at first. Did Robbie also? Robbie did.
Yeah,
Robbie had them at first.
Here, I'll read this off for everybody. So, Nabil, you had MSU at 107, Alamo at 103.5, and Fortile at 103. Anil had Fortile at 90.5, MSU at 89, FCB 83.5. Also, again, I just want to confirm. I don't know if these take the -3 on Alamo into account. So they do. This one, okay, cool. So MSU 100. So this is Robbie. MSU at 100. Fortile at 94. FCB at 93. Jasmeet Fortile at 107. FCB 106. He was really, definitely agree with him. Alamo and MSU tied at 105, and then got him. Fortile at 109, Alamo at 106, and MSU at 105.5. Okay, so it was pretty tight overall. So yeah, go tell me what y'all were thinking when it came to that conversation.
Yeah, so I think it was actually that was actually the hardest decision of the night. I felt like, we did 3 and 4, and we were kind of stuck on that for a bit, but we kind of got that ironed out. And then 1 and 2 was kind of difficult because I felt like everyone had strong feelings about like which team was I guess pulling the Mela factor the most. I feel like MSU had like they brought like a very European vibe, a UK vibe. I felt like to this comp, and it was very formation heavy. They had like a lot of very cohesive, team movements, team execution style performance, and I felt like it really hit very well. And I mean, across the board, I felt like there was other teams that had stronger dancers, but I felt like their execution, because of how the set was made, how formations were done, how just their overall execution, their Mela factor kind of really put them at top. So I was advocating for them for first. But I know Fertile also had a very killer performance. It was kind of tight, but I think everyone had like very strong feelings like about why one team should go first and one team should go second. So it kind of took a little while. I actually don't remember how we got down to deciding though. Does anyone remember how we decided 1 and 2?
We were talking about my deduction. Had I not done that, bump their average up a little bit more.
Was that the only reason that's what we did? I forgot. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
I think we did the Z score. Who had the highest Z score, and Fertile was coming up higher.
I think it was the fact that the Z score showed MSU up by 0.2. So what you're showing there, Umar, for average score is actually the Z score.
This one,
I believe, right?
I don't know. No, the Z score is like cut off over here, like over to the right.
Okay.
Here, I can find it.
Don't scratch what I said, because math is not my thing.
The math isn't mathing, and it's okay.
2 + 2 is not. But I think just we started talking about. There was that thing that Robbie brought up, as well as we started talking about like what characteristics each performance brought. I know on my end, I think they both had young dancers in terms of like 2 different aspects. Young dancing, I think even Nabil was talking about this, was like in terms of dance maturity on the end of Fertile. They weren't hitting things the way like teams like Alamo or like Azaad were hitting things. But at the end of the day, what I argued was that even like Fertile came out like all 1 through 12 dancers looked alike, right? Or sorry, I think they had 12 or 16. No, they had 12.
They had 16.
16 was
you talking
MSU.
about Alamo? You talking about MSU had 16? Yes,
MSU
had 16. They all looked alike, even though it might not be a style of dancing that certain people liked or disliked. Like it's the same thing that's like why we talk about Empire, right? It's like you can shit on Empire all the time, but they were always in sync. They always had the same form, right? They brought formational execution and like they changed the game, right? Here at this comp, like you had a team that came out, they looked all similar. They had a consistent energy 1 through 12 until the very end, unfortunately. Whereas MSU, I think it was like always whoever was in the middle or front had that high energy, where the people on the side and the back kind of took their breaks. They had more dancer rotation than MSU. MSU had a lot of formations for sure. A lot of great mechanisms, a lot of creative mechanisms. But at the end of those mechanisms, it'd always be the same 6 people in front. And I think that's what helped us kind of like go like pick our decision between the 2. It was a very, very tight decision, as you can see by the scores. Like both teams really brought their A game. But yeah, that was.
Yeah. Another thing I want to touch on, I did mention this, but I feel like while MSU and Fertile did have like a younger dancing style, not as mature as like Azaad was a team that stuck out to me that had like very mature dancing style. Alamo, FCB, but all 3 of those teams. But I feel like even though it was a young dancing style, it still looked nice. It still looked like they had good fundamentals, good training, good like a good base in the way they danced. There's a lot of young teams that don't have that, but I feel like the way they executed still looked like proper Bhangra. It did not look awkward at all, and I feel like that also kind of helped.
I think that was like a big thing that kind of like hurt a lot of teams at this competition too, was that like MSU and Fertile were the only 2 teams, in my opinion, that, and you guys can agree or disagree with me, that came out and all their dancers looked relatively very the same, right? Alamo, FCB, Azaad, MMD, they had like MMD, in my opinion, had a lot of different styles going on. Azaad, same thing with that. For Alamo and FCB, they were very close to being all similar, but there was 2 sets of dancers that came on that stage. There was like top half and their bottom half. And the thing is that like their bottom half didn't, like, for both teams, did not look the same as their top half. I'm sorry, that's your team, I know, but deal with it.
It's fine, dog. We know.
But I think that's like the biggest thing that put both MSU and Fertil like on top at this competition was just like they were a unit. They both teams came out, were a unit. They did their style of Bhangra. They executed. They were fresh. They were both new in terms of those 8 teams. But yeah,
I think another aspect of deciding first and second was set design as well, where Fertil's set design was a little bit way more enhanced than MSU, and I felt like, in different categories, when we had the deliberation, everyone was talking about, what they think about, MSU and Fertil, and then what I said was, in the set design aspect, Fertil kind of did a great job in, the creativity of the choreography, which is 15 points, where they scored higher for me over MSU. So I guess that's another big thing that played a role when deciding first and second as well.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is I actually, because like we were all sitting together in the middle of the performances, we weren't discussing our scores or anything, but you could see like when the top 3 placing teams performed, you could just see that like the judges it seemed like they were a little bit more excited. You could see I could see like around me, people were like expressive, that there's like, oh, they hit this cool drop. Oh, they had this like very throwback song, which hit really well at this point in the mix. So I feel like I guess it's the Mela factor, the overall impression, just kind of swung it for these teams. And and I feel like that's kind of what ended up putting overall. I mean, again, I had MSU at first, but again, overall, people I think brought that argument up for Fertil, and that's what kind of put them ahead at 1.
Cool. Thank y'all for coming on.
Ooh, before we sign off.
Oh yeah.
Before we sign off, just everybody listening, take some time, read some news, look into what's going on in Punjab, educate yourselves. The farmers' protest is back. Do your due diligence. That's all I can say at this point, right? Like we saw all the help that like it had, like our voice had last time. We see all the help that our voice is attempting to get within other situations around the world. Like step up, speak up, please. That's it.
Absolutely. Let me hold on. I keep forgetting. So during the first farmer protest, me and Nana, we interviewed a Georgetown professor of South Asian culture and economics at Georgetown. And we did an interview with him, and he really had like a very strong grasp of the history, the Green Revolution, so on and so forth. The episode is Policy to Protest. I'll put a link in the description. It's a great conversation where you literally just get it from a guy who literally does this for a living in terms of creating economic policy for South Asia, for the America. He goes to Georgetown, but if you're in DC, you're probably consulting on somebody. Some policy organizations. So it was a really great eye-opening conversation about the MSP, how that works, and it's really important. It is really important because ultimately, all right, I'm gonna get on the soapbox real quick too for a second. So I've been kind of saying this and having this with conversations, but inshallah, yeah, everything does get better soon. When I had my conversation with Dr. Gabe Schreffler, he's the guy who he actually wrote another episode I did with him. The title of the episode was Dol Drummers' Identities in Modern Punjab. So he wrote a book where he interviewed the lineage of Dolis that from Punjab, and he was explaining to me how before, like back in the day, Dolis were more or less people like came from a certain family, or like I don't want to say caste system, but like there was like a certain group of people who did doles, and it was kind of passed down. It wasn't really something like the landowners would do. They would be played by musicians and musician people. And eventually, and what happened was it was hereditary. It was a hereditary role that people would play, and it would be passed down. But the thing is, over time, Tol, Bhangra, and other performances became more wrapped in around Punjabi identity and Punjabi culture, and it became like a pan Punjabi cultural identity. And he was kind of like raising some interesting questions, saying like, hey, like, listen, this is a hereditary role for a specific group of people within Punjab. Like, he was just like asking the question, like, is this something that like we should be talking about more? And so it got me thinking. But ultimately, what I'm starting to notice, at least within the Desi diaspora, mostly in India, not so much in Pakistan, because Muslims hate fun. I can say that as a Muslim because my family does hate fun in music. But I'm not fucking wrong, dude. Like, our weddings are lame. That's not true. They really am I wrong? They're fucking lame. All right. But anyways, so when I like observe the Desi diaspora, there is a sense that Punjabi culture is just generally being adopted as pan-Indian culture. Like, oh, you're Indian, you probably know how to dance Bhangra, or you can, like, you know what a Tol is, and it's being wrapped into this general sense of like diaspora, even though Punjab is its own very distinct culture. The same way there's so many different cultures that are very distinct, come from very different origins, like Vedic origins, Sri Lankan origins, all Tamil. Like, there's so many different cultures that are very unique, and in another world would probably have their own goddamn country, just because the cultures are so different and diverse. And what I don't really like that is going on is that Bhangra and other aspects of Punjabi culture are being popularized by popular media, and so therefore are being extracted from the cultural context that it originally came from, and just being sanitized, whitewashed, and created as a capitalist product that can be like bought and sold and consumed without any understanding of its history and its context. And what I don't really like is, and again, we saw this from plenty of folks during the first farmer protests, and we're probably going to see it again, but there are plenty of teams, not even just specifically Bhangra teams, but fusion teams as well. Honestly, more so fusion teams that don't. They don't understand the history. They don't understand the culture. They don't take the time. They are using a cultural export from Punjab that is so integral to a Punjabi's identity. And as a Punjabi myself, it bothers me when I see XYZ fusion team dancing to like a song about like glorifying like the 1984 genocide or anything like that, because it's like, dude, you can't just pick up this dance form and not at least interrogate or be at least a little bit interested in its people and its culture. And I'm sorry, I'm like rambling here because I have like many thoughts and feelings about this, but point being, exactly what Anil said. If you're going to be in this fucking circuit, know your shit. I'm not asking you to like learn Punjabi and learn how to read and write in Gurmukhi or Shamukhi or anything like that. I'm not like asking anybody to do that. But what I am asking is, if somebody is somebody of like actual Punjabi descent or Punjabi origin or anybody else in the circuit who is like a leader in the circuit and is telling you, hey motherfucker, like listen to this shit, understand where this culture and this identity and this dance comes from. And when the entire state of Punjab in India, at least not the Western Punjab, and is out there protesting, you better understand why it's happening and be able to speak up and raise awareness for it. Because if you're not, then you are doing the exact thing of being a culture vulture, where you profit, you enjoy the culture, you consume the culture, but you do not contribute to it in any way. That is culture appropriation, not cultural appreciation. But yeah, all right. I get heated. But yeah.
That was great.
Cool.
Dude. I like it.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
It was a good rant.
Okay, cool.
Thanks,
man.
That's the tenacity FCB needed.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much. Don't log off the call. I'm just going to end the stream. But again, if anybody else has any questions, concerns, complaints, criticisms, anything, please let me know. This is the first time I'm doing this. I hope I want to do this more. I hope more judges actually also agree to come this on. I really appreciate that you guys came on and just like did this experiment with me. I know like doing a live conversation and opening yourself to criticism to a bunch of different people is scary and also completely unnecessary. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to volunteer this. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and doing this.
Also,
with that, yeah.
Quick shout out to Bhangra Pod. You guys are killing it. I feel like changing the game, making things a lot more transparent for teams. This kind of stuff never happened when I first started in the circuit, so I feel like you guys are doing an awesome job, killing it, really, really making it a very cool and open circuit. A lot of teams are getting to learn from this, and you know, when you're at a judges meeting, you only get feedback about your own team, but now you kind of get to hear feedback that we give to every team, so you can kind of enhance your team, get your teams dancing up. I think it's just a great thing for the entire circuit. So good job to the entire pod team.
It's just me right now, but thanks.
I thought you had a full team with you, but Dan, if it's just you, then you're killing it, man. Good job.
Cool.